So I just watched episode 1 of Daredevil Born Again, and I have to talk about it. Episode 1 was just, I don't even know how to explain it. But before I dive in, I gotta say, it's an honor seeing Charlie Cox and Vincent D'Onofrio back as Matt Murdock and Kingpin. You can tell these characters mean something to them, and it shows in their performances. And also, shout out to Wilson Bethel as well. He's killing it as Bullseye. Now, the way episode 1 started, I thought things were going to be smooth. The first few minutes are spent reintroducing us to the characters, which I appreciated, since it's been like, what, 7 years since we last saw them? Then out of nowhere, Bullseye pulls up and airs out the place. He shoots and mortally wounds Foggy, then turns to take out Karen, but Daredevil steps in. As Matt fights Bullseye, he keeps checking in on Foggy and Karen, with Foggy's condition getting worser. This whole scene really sells how overwhelmed Matt is. He's trying to fight Bullseye while protecting the civilians in the bar and watching over his friends all at once. The fight is messy, brutal, and dragged out in the best possible way. This scene in the episode also really establishes Bullseye as a straight menace. He was just taking people out indiscriminately during the fight. There's a small moment where Bullseye tosses a coffee cup and it bounces around and then it kills a woman, which is insane but also kinda cool. During their fight, they head up a stairway and Bullseye is just launching knives at Daredevil and he's just tanking him. The fight eventually leads both men onto the rooftop, and Matt hears that Foggy died and he asks Bullseye why he did it. And then there's a moment where Bullseye laughs and pats Matt on the arm, like he's saying, yeah, we're gonna be doing this for a long time. Matt pushes Bullseye off the building, and I thought that was that, but somehow this nigga survived the fall and wasn't even paralyzed. Then I remembered, back in the season 3 finale, he went through an experimental surgery that rebuilt his spine with metal, after the Kingpin broke his back and paralyzed him. Speaking of Bullseye, his costume straight out of the Chip Zdarsky and Marco Cheddle Daredevil run. It definitely feels like a prototype suit, kinda like how Matt's costume was in Daredevil Season 1. I seriously was not expecting Foggy to go out like that. Man, I had to pause the show and walk around my apartment for a few minutes. After this, we get a time skip. A year has passed since Foggy's death. Karen moves to San Francisco but returns to visit Matt for Bullseye's murder trial, and it's clear that their relationship kind of fell apart after Foggy's death. Meanwhile, Fisk visits Vanessa, and we learn that she's been running his entire criminal empire while he's been away. Also, Wilson Fisk announces his candidacy for mayor this episode as well. One thing I wasn't expecting this show to do was introduce a new character by the name of BB Urich, Ben Urich's niece. Throughout the episode, she's running a news segment asking people on the street what they think about Wilson Fisk. Now, there were some problems with this episode I want to talk about as well. One of the problems was the CGI. It wasn't horrible, but there were definitely moments where it stood out. When Daredevil swings in and knocks Bullseye into the bar, you can tell it's definitely CGI. There's another scene where Daredevil's on the rooftop and he jumps down and hits Bullseye and knocks him down. The CGI they used for the scene just didn't look right. While the action in this episode was solid, it wasn't quite on the level of the Netflix Daredevil series action scenes, but I hold my judgment as it's only episode 1. It's barely noticeable, but I do love the little small detail of the bullseye on his glove. It's a nice touch. As for the MCU connections, this show feels loosely tied to it. There are a small few references sprinkled in this episode, like when Matt and Fisk meet at a diner and Fisk says, "We don't need vigilantes like that spider guy and White Tiger." At the end of the day, episode 1 made a statement. This is going to be a different show. While I had to speed run some loose ends from season 3, okay action scenes, and some spotty camera work, it was still a solid episode.